I still remember the sound, the shatter of glass echoing through the living room, a scream I wasn't sure was mine, and the cold air that rushed in as I hit the floor outside. For a moment, I thought I was dreaming, that maybe, at 80 years old, my mind had finally blurred the line between nightmare and memory. But when I saw my own blood scattered across the porch tiles, and my son's silhouette standing in the doorway, I knew it was real. "Mom, you shouldn't have pushed her," he said, his voice sharp but shaking. I hadn't pushed anyone. My only mistake had been existing in a house I'd helped them buy, a house that no longer felt like mine. 3 years earlier, this home had been my act of love. After my husband passed, I sold our small cottage by the lake, the one we'd built plank by plank when life was simpler, to help my son and his wife start fresh. They wanted something modern, something that reflected their future. I didn't argue. That was always my weakness with Daniel, believing that giving would make him love me more. Daniel had always been the clever one, the kind of boy teachers adored and neighbors admired, but somewhere between ambition and resentment, something in him hardened. Maybe it was his wife, Clara, polished, beautiful, and cold as marble. Or maybe it was me, the mother who never stopped reminding him of where he came from. In the beginning, Clara was all warmth. She'd make tea for me, talk about redecorating, even ask for my recipes. But kindness with her was a currency, spent only when she needed something. I realized that when my savings vanished into their business investment and her tone changed overnight, suddenly I was no longer mom. I was your mother, said with a sigh, as if the word itself was a burden. Still, I stayed. I helped with their child, cooked their meals, even cleaned up after their late-night dinners with friends. I told myself family meant forgiveness. But that night, the night of the glass door, something inside me finally cracked. It started with Clara's voice, high and furious. "You went through my drawers again." I hadn't. I was looking for a pair of reading glasses I'd misplaced. But before I could explain, she was shouting, her hands flying, and Daniel stepped between us, not to defend me, but to silence me. When the shove came, it was instinct, not intention. I stumbled backward, caught the edge of the rug, and then the world turned into glass and pain. As I lay there, the porch light flickered overhead. I heard Clara whisper, "She'll be fine. She always is." But what they didn't know, what they couldn't have known, was that beneath that calm silence I'd worn for years, there was a secret I had kept even from them, a secret buried deeper than any wound. And that night, as the shards glittered under the moonlight, I decided it was time to let the silence work for me. The hospital smelled of antiseptic and loneliness. I stared at the white ceiling, wondering how a lifetime of love could end with a single push. My wrist was wrapped in gauze. My ribs ached, but it was the silence that hurt most. No one came. Not Daniel. Not Clara. Just the nurse who called me Mrs. Ellis with professional detachment, as if I were a stranger. Lying there, I had time to think. Too much time. The mind has a way of replaying the same scenes until they lose their color. Daniel's first steps, his graduation day, the way he used to call me mama when nightmares scared him. I kept wondering, when that boy disappeared, and who this man had become in his place. When I was discharged, the taxi driver helped me to the door. My son didn't even open it. It was the housekeeper, eyes down, who muttered, "They're out." She handed me an envelope, a polite eviction disguised as concern. Clara's handwriting was neat, deliberate. "You need rest and space. We think it's best you stay at a care facility for a while. Don't worry, Daniel's already made arrangements." Arrangements. As if I were an old piece of furniture to be stored away. I didn't argue. I'd learned long ago that arguing with Daniel only made him colder. Instead, I folded the letter, placed it in my pocket, and quietly packed my things. A few dresses, a photo of my late husband, and the old brooch he'd given me on our 30th anniversary, a small gold piece shaped like a lily. No one knew it was hollow inside. The care home was kind enough. Clean, quiet, forgettable. I stayed polite, invisible. That was my gift. People saw me, but they never looked. They didn't see the woman behind the gentle smile, or the mind that never truly stopped calculating. Because while Daniel and Clara lived in the illusion of control, I held something far greater, a truth I'd hidden for decades. When my husband died, I didn't sell everything we owned. He had taught me that safety wasn't in people's promises, but in quiet preparation. Beneath the foundation of that lake cottage, our home, I had left more than memories. In the evenings, I'd sit by the window, watching the sun melt behind the hills, and I'd think of Daniel's face when he'd finally learn. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was a flame. It burned fast. But silence, that was the ocean, steady, deep, unforgiving. When Clara visited one afternoon, feigning concern, she asked, "Do you need anything?" I smiled. "No, dear. I already have everything I need." She mistook it for frailty. But behind that calm, I was already building something, an ending neither of them would see coming. Weeks passed, and I became a ghost in that care home, present, polite, and invisible. It was exactly what I needed. People talk freely around someone they assume is harmless. I listened to everything. The nurses gossiping, the visitors whispering. Silence had become my sharpest tool. Daniel visited only once. He stood by the window, restless, tapping his phone more than he looked at me. "Mom, Clara thinks it's best if you stay here long term. The house, it's a lot for you. For me, the house I'd bought, furnished, and filled with memories." I simply nodded. "You're right, Daniel. Maybe it's time I let go." He looked relieved, even smiled. "Good, we'll handle everything. You just rest." That was the moment I knew. He truly believed I was finished, that my silence meant surrender. The next morning, I called an old friend, Raymond. He'd been my husband's lawyer once, back when we still believed in futures. He owed me a favor, and I cashed it in quietly. "I need access to the safe deposit box," I said. "The one under Henry's name." There was a pause on the line. "After all these years, Margaret, you're finally opening it?" "Yes," I replied. "It's time." Inside that box lay the documents my husband and I had hidden before his death. Investment certificates, property deeds, and a key to a small offshore account worth over $21 million. Money earned quietly, saved diligently, never declared to Daniel. He thought my world ended with that cottage, but he never looked beneath its foundations, literally or metaphorically. That evening, I stared at the papers spread across my lap. The ink faded, but powerful. My husband's handwriting scrolled across one page. "If anything happens to me, trust no one until you must." I smiled. "I waited long enough, Henry." The next step was almost too easy. I contacted Raymond again, this time with instructions. The will would be rewritten, not to disinherit Daniel, but to make him face himself. Every cent was to go into a trust, released only upon a single condition: a written apology and public acknowledgement of what he and Clara had done. Not to me, but to the authorities. I wanted them to face their reflection in the mirror they'd cracked. Days turned into weeks, and word of my declining health spread. Clara began visiting more often, her tone dripping with artificial sweetness. "You know, we've been thinking about selling the lake cottage," she said one afternoon. I leaned back in my chair. "You should, dear. There's not much left there anymore." It was true, not much they could see. When she left, I felt the quiet hum of satisfaction settle in my chest. The game had shifted, though they didn't know it yet. They'd broken glass to show their strength. But I'd built silence to hold my power, and soon, the silence would speak louder than either of them ever imagined. It was a soft winter morning when the storm finally broke. The care home was quiet. wrapped in the stillness that follows snowfall, when I received a call from Raymond. His voice carried a restrained excitement. "It's done, Margaret. The trust papers are filed. They'll find out soon enough." "Good," I said, watching frost trace the window. "Let them open their gift." 2 days later, Daniel and Clara arrived. Unannounced, uneasy, pretending it was a casual visit, but their eyes betrayed them. Clara's smile was tight, her gloved hands restless. Danielle's voice trembled beneath forced calm. "We got a letter from the lawyer, something about Dad's estate being reopened." I gestured toward the chair opposite me. "Sit." Clara hesitated. "We thought everything from your husband was settled years ago." "Not quite," I replied. "He was thorough, far more than you realized." I handed them an envelope. The same kind of envelope Clara once used to send me away. She opened it with a smirk that vanished as she read. Daniel's jaw tightened. The trust terms were clear. $21 million locked away, to be released only after a public confession of their actions. The assault, the theft, the deceit. This is insane," Daniel stammered. "You're blackmailing us." I met his eyes, steady and cold. "I'm teaching you consequences." Clara's composure cracked first. "You can't prove anything." "Oh, but I can," I said softly. "You see, silence doesn't mean ignorance. The night you pushed me, the security camera by the front porch caught everything. The system your dear husband installed, the one I paid for." Daniel paled. Clara froze, her words dying in her throat. "I didn't show the footage to the police," I continued. "Not yet, but it's safe, just like the money. And both will be released if anything unfortunate happens to me." The room fell silent. Outside, a branch scraped against the window like a whisper of judgment. "You'd ruin your own son?" Daniel asked, voice cracking between anger and disbelief. I felt something inside me shift. Not triumph, not bitterness, but peace. "No, Daniel, you ruined yourself. I just stopped pretending not to see it." Clara stood abruptly. "You're bluffing." "Maybe," I said with a faint smile. "But are you willing to find out?" They left without another word. The door clicked shut, leaving behind a quiet so heavy it felt like a benediction. I sat there for a long time, staring at the photograph of my late husband on the mantel. "You were right, Henry," I whispered. "Trust no one until you must." The truth had finally been unearthed. Not shouted, but unveiled through silence sharper than any scream. And though the war wasn't over yet, I could feel its end drawing near, steady as the slow thaw of winter ice. Months passed before I saw them again. The news came not from a letter or a phone call, but from a quiet headline buried in the business section. Local couple faces. Financial investigation after anonymous tip. The article was short, factual, merciless. Their company accounts were frozen, their names whispered in circles that once celebrated them. I didn't need to ask who the anonymous source was. Some storms are best delivered without fingerprints. At the care home, life resumed its gentle rhythm. Meals at 6, walks at 10, the slow comforting hum of old souls surviving together. No one here knew that I was worth more than everyone in that building combined, and I liked it that way. Sometimes, in the soft hours between dusk and night, I would sit by the window and watch the streetlights flicker to life. That was when the ghosts came to visit. Not to haunt, but to remind. I thought of Daniel as a little boy, laughing as his father lifted him onto his shoulders, reaching for the son he thought was his to claim. I thought of Clara, so desperate to be admired that she forgot how to be kind. Forgiveness, I'd learned, isn't something you give for others. It's something you claim for yourself. I didn't forgive them for their sake. I forgave them so their cruelty wouldn't live rent-free in my heart anymore. One afternoon, a nurse handed me an envelope. No return address, no signature. Inside was a single line in Daniel's handwriting. "I don't deserve your love, but I finally understand what it cost. No money, No apology to the authorities yet, but for the first time, a crack in his armor. It wasn't redemption, but it was real. I tucked the note beside my husband's photograph and smiled. I didn't need revenge anymore. The silence had already done its work. That evening, I walked to the garden behind the care home. The air smelled of rain and lilac. I brushed my fingers against the earth and whispered, "We did it, Henry." In our own quiet way. The world had taken much from me. My home, my family, my dignity. But it hadn't taken my will. Beneath every wound was a strength I hadn't known I possessed until the night the glass shattered. Now, I live simply. I donate quietly. I exist in peace. Daniel and Clara will live with the echo of what they did, and perhaps one day, they'll understand the price of betraying the hands that once built their comfort. As for me, I've learned that silence is not weakness. It's power in its purest form. It's the pause before truth speaks, the space where dignity rebuilds itself. And in that silence, I found not revenge, but freedom.